Into another weekly LNP Lancaster Online Sports Roundtable. I'm John Walk with my colleagues Mike Gross and Jeff Reinhart. On the horn with us this week is PIAA Executive Director Dr. Robert Lombardi. Obviously, decided to have him on here in light of yesterday's news. As we record this, we're a little bit more than 24 hours removed from Governor Wolf's press conference where it announced kind of return to play plans for high schools, youth athletics across the state. By the way, I just want to give you guys a quick background on Dr. Lombardi in case you're not too familiar. He's been in his current role since 2012. He's worked for the PIAA since 1988, and that came after earning a doctorate in sports administration from the University of New Mexico and a bachelor's in education from East Stroudsburg. All right, with all that said, I will throw it to my colleague Mike Gross for the first question.
Hi, Bob. Welcome. I've talked to a number of ADs in the last 24 hours who were a little surprised at the abruptness of this. They were expecting July 1st. They were expecting, or maybe we're not even going to think about this until we're in the green phase. Were you surprised at the abruptness of this and green and yellow and everybody can go as soon as they're ready to go?
I was pleasantly surprised, and when it first was floated by us, we agreed to it right away for the simple reason that we felt that it was important to give our schools as much opportunity as they could to open their campuses and not drive students away from their own programs to outside of school programs. So we thought it was a bonus and a win-win for our schools.
So that was one of the areas in which you had some input and there was some give and take and you kind of knew what was coming.
Yeah, a little bit. The governor's office is the one that said green and yellow, like you stated, yeah. Mike. We were a little bit surprised about the yellow. We didn't think anything would occur till green. But when they said they wanted to include that, we certainly weren't going to say no.
Brian's.
Bob, explain to the folks, if you would, why you guys are having the schools make up their individual health plan and float it to their board. Why didn't the state or you guys say, here's the plan, this is what you must do, take it to your board? Why are you having each school do it individually?
Well, I think part of that came from a recommendation from the Sport Medicine Advisory Committee to say that one size does not fit all. There are schools that don't have a really limited number of sports and a limited number of students. There's some of our schools that are very, very large and have an expansive athletic program and a varied number of sports. So to treat a small A school of 50 students compared to a 1,500 student body or more, it's not comparable. That guidance came from the governor and the Department of Ed. We did have some input into that, but they really drove the bus on that. So it wasn't like we were going to say, hey, listen, this is what we would like to do and you're going to accept it. They drove the bus and they said, do you have any suggestions? And we cooperated the best we could and got as much information to make it as seamless as we could for our schools. Just one remark, Jeff, last Friday we put out to all our schools a heads up press release that went directly to the schools themselves and said, if you haven't been thinking about this, and we had put press releases out previously with links for them to think about those things. If they weren't getting ready as of Friday, we tried to give them, this is coming. We didn't know if it was going to come Tuesday. We didn't know if it was going to come Wednesday. We didn't know if it was going to come next week, but we knew it was coming. My understanding is the Department of Ed is still working on another type of template that may be a catch-all that is very expansive that people can use. But that's where that came from.
Gotcha. We heard Hollidaysburg already voted. We're hearing some LL League schools may vote as early as Monday. Have you guys kind of projected or thought about how long it's going to take everybody to kind of get the ball rolling?
No, we just thought that if a school could do it as early as next week, that gave them a bonus of 10 to 15 days. And I think when you've had students sitting on inactivity somewhat, from March 13th. I think it's really important to allow people to get back in the weight room or out on the workout facilities with some guidance of people that are certified to get them ready for a potential fall season.
Yeah.
Bob, as far as the return to play, can you just kind of break it down as far as the stage we're at now? Because some people might confuse it for saying, okay, let's go ahead and start playing games in July or August. That's not how it's going to be. Can you kind of explain what the yellow phase means and how we get to then playing games in the green phase?
Well, there are no games in the yellow or green phase. There's no out-of-season participation as a team. So there is no practice till August 17th or August 10th for heat acclimatization for football. Now, people that are having voluntary type of workouts, they can start that immediately as soon as they get their plan approved by their board and post it on their website. That's the three phases. Develop a plan, get it approved by your governing board, and then have it posted to the website. That is different and doesn't have to be married to the reopening phase of the other educational factors that they have that have been put out for the fall. That's something that they can continue to work on. So as far as summer leagues, 7-on-7, those things can go along as they meet our standards. They're not mandatory, they're not compulsory, they're voluntary, those type of items at this time. I hope I answered your question, John.
Bob, you have the form that athletes have to fill out and complete when they get their physical, which is a PIAA form, which is fairly lengthy. It includes a pretty lengthy section on head trauma, concussion, and also on like sudden cardiac arrest. Is there a possibility? Have you thought about adding a section similar to that about COVID-19?
Yes, and we talked about that with our sport medicine committee, and at this time they weren't prepared to put that in there about COVID. That should be handled on an individual basis with the student and their attending authorized medical examiner.
One thing I wonder, this is not really on the front burner, but when we do start playing again, I noticed in the National Federation guidelines, there was some stuff about like who are essential personnel for having the game, like who do you have to have there for a game? And then there was the second category that was like it would be advisable to have these people there, and we were in that category. The media. Has there been any thought about how these events are going to be covered by the media, particularly because there may not be a lot of fans there, and maybe our role becomes more direct as a conduit to the fans a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a little early to try to throw the media out. And I would certainly, not be a proponent for that, because I think you folks are important to what's going on in athletics. However, as part of that, I think what we're going to see is we're going to operate from standard operating procedures that we've had. You may see some differences on how you're housed. May see some differences of where you're allowed to go. You may not have locker room access after contests like you may have had in the past. There may be some small tweaks, but at this time, I think we're going to operate from the standard operating procedure that you folks will be there and covering the games. But I think Federation's piece was a resource piece, just a baseline, items to consider as you put together. And I think that with the CDC, the playbook from UPMC, there's another one out by the sport medicine group throughout the country. There's Homer Delatre put the one out from the recreational programs, and he's developed one. Jason Zimmerman from Northwestern Lehigh, the athletic director, has put together his own that he's sharing with schools. So I think that's going to be sort of meted out as we get closer to events.
Homer is by the way, for people who don't know, is the guy at Hollidaysburg, and he's also a football coach and I guess the AD at Hollidaysburg. Bob, here's another thing that I thought about when I was reading some of these guidelines. For example, what if two schools have different guidelines for transportation, for example? So let's say school A is going to school B, and they have different standards for as far as how many people you're allowed to have in a bus. Would that kind of thing have to be standardized, or could that be an individual, difference in different plans?
In answering that, and again, this is a what if, so it's tough to have conjecture, and I get very nervous about what ifs, because sometimes when people answer those, the first thing they hear sticks, and it may not be the end game. Right. But to answer your question, I think in fairness to you, Mike, that's going to be an individual school decision based, in many cases, it may be directed and may be driven by their busing contracts and the decisions of their local boards. Right now, and to the people that are listening out there for this, busing is a huge concern just for schools to get students to school during the day. So there's a lot of folks that are working on just getting students who don't have the wherewithal to get into school without a bus, to work out those type of plans and that transportation. And I'm sure that because of that, first and foremost, athletics are in there, but they're probably a little bit more to the back burner till they figure out some of their philosophies, schedules, and those type of things. Because if you got some of the preliminary information and looked at what's in about busing, I don't think there's enough buses in the United States to take care of not only Pennsylvania, but every other school. I mean, it's going to be a challenge there.
Yeah. Bob, take us back to March for a second. We had a lot of local ADs tell us, quote unquote, that you guys bent over backwards to try and finish swimming and basketball. How difficult was that, knowing what you know now, but when you had to eventually pull the plug on swimming and basketball, how difficult was that? And did you really have plan B, plan C, plan D ready to go just in case?
Well, we had a whole lot of philosophical contingency plans. We didn't have anything penciled out to say if A happens, then B happens. And the reason we didn't is because Massachusetts did that. And then when they shut down their schools, they took a beating for saying, look, you put these plans out, we were expecting this. And when it went south, you gave us false information. So we tried to stay away from that. But to answer your question, Jeff, if you remember, it was March 12th, Thursday, that we said we're going to take a 2-week hiatus in basketball to see where this goes. That Thursday, we had to go to time trials for AAA swimming because Bucknell was getting tremendous amount of pressure, not only from their administration, but their community about possible activity there. So it was very, very difficult to know that you were postponing the first part, a season for these student athletes that work so hard. We were going to wait to almost doomsday to see if we could possibly restart or even be creative and try to finish, because we know how important those events are as a finality for those student athletes, their communities, their schools, their coaches, and everybody that goes with it. So we were hoping against hope, I guess, as it turned out. And then once the governor closed the schools, we really had no choice. And like you've seen across the country, every one of the 51 state associations were all shut down.
Yeah, what's this 3 or 4 months been like for you and your staff? I mean, there's no way you were prepared for this. So what's it been like for you guys, and just having to deal with this and the phone calls and the governor's office and CDC? What's it been like for you guys?
Gut wrenching. Gut wrenching. It stings tremendously. I know you read things out on Twitter that people think, oh, well, Dole, you got to do this and you don't care and blah, blah, blah. Well, they fail to realize that we have people in our office that have kids playing athletics. They're working the concession stands for their booster clubs at night, just like I just went through with my children. And we're part of those school communities. And it is gut wrenching because we live and breathe it. So, and then to be at the end, the other side, where you're making a decision that may impact 350,000 student athletes in their communities, or 750 high schools and same number of junior highs and 14,000 referees, it gets your attention. And heck, Jeff, look how the whole nation reacted to no athletics for the last 3 months. You folks are beside yourself. You're looking for stories. I mean, I feel bad for you guys too. Some of you have been furloughed. It's tough. I mean, I've talked every Wednesday for the last month. I've talked to 7 other states in our NFHS family, our Section 2 family, and some of them are concerned about going out of business.
Wow.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, with us, at least for me personally anyway, I've always been wondering, okay, what happens if nothing improves and we stay status quo and there's no sports in the fall? Do me, Jeff, and Mike say goodbye for now? But with that said, things are starting to kind of seem a little bit hopeful. And I'm just wondering from your standpoint, how much maybe a relief it is to finally get to this stage at the very, I know there's still a lot that has to happen, but things are kind of starting to look up here.
John, we're cautiously optimistic for the start of the fall. We're 2 months away. And the reason I say that, look where we were 10 days ago. And now yesterday, you guys said it at the top of the show, yellow and green. So, I think there's some real advances that have been made. And I guess there's an underlying theme here that I don't think people talk about a lot. People are trying to do the right thing. We're trying to write a prescription for everybody to do this, to do that. You know what? There is some common sense there, and people are doing it. Just look around at the grocery stores, looking around in your communities. People are trying to take care of themselves because they worry not only about themselves, but they don't want to, if by chance, they don't want to give it to someone else either. So I think you got to have a little faith in people too. So we're hopeful. Maybe our season will be full blast. We're hopeful of that, really hopeful of that. If it's not, it might be truncated. It might not look totally the same, but hopefully we can get something. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different states on a lot of different things they've come up with. And some of them are really optimistic, and some of them are really depressing.
Wow. So no games until green. So first night of football in August, late August. You're not going to kick off unless it's green, or the phase after that, which is like all clear or whatever it's going to be called.
Well, we think that answer will come in the next few weeks. And
Bob, on Monday you have a board of directors meeting. And what are you expecting to hear about this? It feels like schools there's a spectrum. On the one hand, we don't want to have a competitive disadvantage by not getting our guys in the field quick enough. On the other hand, obviously, we want to be safe. We want to be careful. We want to tread. Are you expecting to hear any of that and deal with any of that on Monday?
Not really, Mike. I think that was answered at the last board meeting, and I think you may have heard part of it, the passionate conversation that District 11 Chairman Bob Hartman had, and said, we need kids to be able to be kids. We need them to do the things that they do best, and that is be involved with activities. And that comment that he said resonated, I think, with everybody, not only on the board, but across the Commonwealth, because, there is, if you start July 1 and you started the 10th, you have 20 extra days. At this point in the season, since there's no structured practice, there's no structured games, I think the impact of that is limited. very
Yeah.
limited.
Very limited. I
But
agree.
now, if we were saying, okay, starting July 1, you folks can do full-blown practice and you can have scrimmages and you can have that, then I think it shifts. But where we are now, no, I think it's good to get students back on their campuses to do what they do with the people that are trained and help keep them safe and keep them out of some of these outside the school programs that I don't think have their best interests at heart.
Okay.
Last one from me would be, are you just kind of stressing patience at this point? Be patient, gang. One step at a time. We were red, it was awful. Now we're yellow, things are getting a little better. We'll be green soon, fingers crossed. Is patience key here? And then hopefully, knock on wood, it'll be normal again, whatever that is going to mean. Patience?
Yeah, Jeff, I think you have it's a good comment. That's been very difficult in all this, just even waiting in the last few weeks for these guidelines. We knew that they were coming, but to wait and wait. And I can't tell you the number of calls I fielded on Monday and Tuesday. Hey, are they coming tomorrow? Hey, I didn't hear anything today. Did you? And I understand that people are itchy. They're itchy. And yes, patience is a virtue in this case. But I will say a system, and the governor's philosophy has been, and I'm not talking politics here, I'm just saying he's taken a measured approach, a systemized, a categorical, step-by-step approach. And I think we have to do the same thing to keep our students on their campuses as safe as possible. And I think if you ask every AD or every coach, they will do anything to ensure that and then still allow some activity. Because that's what they do best. They're problem solvers, they're fixers, they're rule followers.
Excellent.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Well, hey, Dr. Lombardi, we know you're a busy man, answering many questions and pulling a lot of strings for a lot of people. So we appreciate you taking out this short amount of time to chat with us today. I hope that this provides a little bit of clearance or answers a lot of questions for those out there. So thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
John and Jeff and Mike, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And if you need anything else, I'd be glad to help at any time. I think Mike knows that. He calls me every once in a
Yeah,
while.
we do a lot of talking. Yeah, we do a lot of talking on the phone. Yeah, I do
That's
appreciate that.
And it's good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
You,
Have a
Bob.
good day.
Best of
We'll see
luck.
you. Yep. Bye now.
Yep.